Hello and welcome to The Making Season 3 with me, Shereen Bhan, in association with HSBC. India's pledge to achieve net zero emission goals by 2070 needs adequate green financing or sustainable financing, especially where SMEs are concerned. More precisely, India needs around $10.1 trillion to achieve net zero emissions. The good news is that with COP27 around the corner, there will be a lot of focus on improving climate resilience through collaboration and financial aid from developed countries. Hope also comes in the form of more domestic financing options and increased public awareness about the need for green projects for long term sustainable economic growth. In fact, India is poised to issue 240 billion rupees at least in sovereign green bonds to enable the transition to a low carbon economy. So, on this episode, we look at how major financial institutions are planning to support small and big businesses on their decarbonization journey via green bonds, sustainability linked loans, expertise, and insights. We explore how financial institutions are helping investors and clients attain sustainability goals and unlock opportunities in a low carbon economy. To talk to me about all of this and more, joining me on the program, Rajat Verma, Commercial Banking Head at HSBC India, Mahesh Kohli, owner of Greenco, and Kuldeep Jain, the MD of CleanMax. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on the program. Let me get started by talking about the decarbonization opportunity. In fact, just 24 hours ago, a report suggests that one of the key pillars for the shift in India's economy to becoming one of the largest economies in the world over the decade is likely to be the opportunities thrown up by decarbonization. So I want to get all three of you to start on exactly that. Mahesh, let me get you to address this issue, where we currently stand as far as the transition roadmap is concerned, and more importantly, the opportunities that it throws up.
Sure, thanks, Shereen. I think clearly India is in a different space compared to the rest of the world. Decarbonization for India means a lot deeper in terms of energy security, a lot deeper in terms of because carbon is a foreign resource for India, and any value we add through decarbonization is all about saving economics in terms of energy cost to the market and also energy security, in addition to, of course, the carbon footprint reduction, right? So just to give some context, in the last 6 months, we have signed with at least 3 to 4 large industrial groups, the likes of ArcelorMittal, Hindalco, and other major industrial groups, because they would like to decarbonize their industrial operations with carbon-free energy framework. That's going deeper than renewables. And a carbon-free is about how do you ensure you can have 24/7 clean energy to run reliable operations of the large industrial operations. And carbon free is making their products and services low carbon. And the new globalized trade, it's not about just low cost, it's actually low cost combined with what's a carbon footprint. And the likes of the whole EV transition we're talking about is going to largely use aluminium as part of their new metal. But aluminium is 40% more carbon intense. So the likes of Volkswagen, now they're asking for, we want to buy aluminium, but quota is not just on your ability to supply, but quota is on what is the carbon footprint and how you're going to make it as well. Right? So that's an interesting opportunity. And I believe India has the lowest cost carbon-free energy globally. We can deliver carbon-free energy less than $50 per megawatt hour, which will make India most competitive globally in terms of the new rules of the trade to enable green, low carbon commodities to be exported around the world.
Well, that's a great point to get started on. And Kuldeep, let me get you to build on what we just heard there from Mahesh. The opportunity that decarbonization throws up, the competitive advantage, in his words, that India enjoys. Take me through what that means, for instance, as far as your company is concerned, and how are you gearing up to capitalize on this?
Thank you, Shereen. Firstly, I'd like to emphasize that for India to get to near net zero, there's 2 simple pillars of that solution. One is to decarbonize the grid. If you look at our power sector, contributes to 38% today of India's emissions, and the global number is 41%. So it's pretty much in that zone. So decarbonize the grid, and the second half of that is electrify everything. What I mean by electrify everything is electrify processes. So a lot of, if you look, 20% of carbon emissions is in industries, things like boilers. But instead of burning diesel or fuel oil in the boilers, you can have electric boilers. So if you and then electrify transportation, which is EV for buses, for trucks, for cars, two-wheelers, and so on. If we are able to decarbonize the grid and electrify everything, this accounts for over 70% of India's carbon footprint. What it has meant for us is we have, for the last 12 years, served Indian and global corporates in their journey to go green. So we have over 300 corporate clients. We have over 600 PPAs, more than 1,000 installations of all types, wind, solar, hybrid plants to the smaller rooftop plants. In that range, we do all of that. And interestingly, what we are finding is this year, we are being able to add as much capacity for corporates as we had added in the last decade. So that's the sort of business boom that we are dealing with. So it's been great news. But that said, I must say, while we are doing incredibly well as a company, I don't think India is accelerating on its decarbonization journey at the pace at which it is needed to. So, we are maybe winning our little battles, all of us. We are growing very well, we are profitable and so on. But, the planet is losing. And that's not a great situation. That's not a great message to give to our kids.
Well, thanks very much for that reality check, Kuldeep. Yes, the planet is indeed losing, even though many companies like yours are trying to do their best. You talked about the business boom as well as the capacity addition and expansion that you have seen over the last few years. Let's talk about some of the constraints and let's talk about some of these challenges just to build on what where you left the conversation. And Rajat, I want you to address that issue from a financing perspective. And we have seen things, of course, change and evolve. Today, India is the 19th largest market globally when it comes to green social sustainability bonds, the sixth in the Asia Pacific region, one of only 8 countries to issue under all 3 themes, which is green, sustainability, and social. Now, from a financing perspective, how much of a constraint is that to be able to deliver on the aspirations that we've just articulated?
Yeah, Shereen, I think financing is going to be a very key part of this because all of the initiatives that are required towards net zero are very capital intensive, and these are now if you think of renewable energy clearly and the work that Mahesh does in storage, etc. These are massive amount of capitals. Any estimates range between 100 to 150 billion dollars a year, and we're nowhere near that mark at this point in time. So financing is going to be really important. There's another type of financing which I think we were talking before the show really was around the capital that you need prior to technologies becoming commercial, and the amount of capital that is required in early stage or in research and development is nowhere near the amount that it needs to be. So I think it's a really long way to go, and to that extent, I'd sort of share some of the sentiment that Kuldeep has mentioned about the planet is losing. But that said, I think India has a unique opportunity of going, from remaining relatively low carbon because we per capita, we are significantly lower than the West, as we all know. But there is an opportunity for us to leapfrog with the technology that is coming in every aspect of carbonization or decarbonization that we've spoken about. So it's somewhat from the outside, it seems to me that it's somewhat like how we moved from no phones to mobile, and we completely skipped the generation of landlines. So somewhat, perhaps it's not a very accurate analogy, but it seems to me that we could show the way to the world, and the level of incentivization, etc., that is coming up needs to accelerate. The level of financing needs to accelerate, and all the solutions around financing can be found as long as these technologies and these plans around all of this decarbonization is commercially viable. And we know renewable energy is commercially viable. We now know that storage is commercially viable, and we now know that electric vehicles is getting to be commercially viable. So I think it's a pretty good journey. So I would be reasonably optimistic about financing.
some of those issues that you raised, Rajat. But I just want to pick up on the financing issue and talk to both Mahesh as well as Kuldeep in terms of what challenges they have been able to overcome in the financing journey. So, Mahesh, let me start by asking you. Greenco is, of course, also raised by the green bond route, one of the many companies, along with Azure, PFC, and others. What was the challenge? What continue to be the constraints on this path?
No, I think we had started this journey way back in 2015. So we're probably the largest issuers of green bonds in Asia. We've issued close to $4+ billion of green bonds. I think clearly, in fact, one of the largest issuers of high yield bonds, because I think the market traditionally, does green bonds for investment grade companies. But there's always a challenge that energy companies or energy related companies in India can't be investment grade because the discoms or the off takers in India are not investment grade. So it's always been that challenge, how to cross a bridge for a typically green bonds being an investment grade sector for a high yield issuers also to achieve the same ability to access large scale capital. But in an interesting example, as late as May this year, after the war has started, we have raised close to $1 billion of green bonds. That shows the market appetite. Not just green bonds, raised green bonds to build new projects. We raised one of its first of its kind energy storage bond to build large scale energy storage. We're building close to 50,000 megawatt hours of energy storage. And this bond we raised about close to $1 billion is for first of those 4 projects we're building. So I guess I think the market globally, India in a non-investment grade category, most energy companies are. We have to cross that educational bridge. And I guess globally they look at India from a non-subsidized, commercially viable businesses compared to what I hear in US and Europe. So I think when we educate the market that whatever we're doing in India is fundamental to the energy sector, fundamental to the industrial decarbonization. Most of that is now it's a function of cost, of course, what we saw in last 2 quarters with Fed. And that cost increase will have some challenge on the long-term project returns. But I think India has been able to access at least the global bond market, a priority of across other countries in any amount of scale we would like to achieve. Yeah.
Kuldeep and Mahesh, I want you to chip in on what we just heard there from Rajat. If you were to add to the to-do list, one, of course, is just what we need to see in terms of deepening of the bond market, but other regulatory policy changes that you believe are needed at this point in time to ensure that we do deepen this ecosystem. Kuldeep, let me start by asking you.
Well, firstly, I would compliment the government. I think very quietly in July of this year, the government, by means of an ordinance, has amended the Electricity Act. They have made now procurement of green energy a consumer right. So it's at the level of right to education and right to free speech, and enacted a lot of measures to make it easier for every consumer, every retail store, every small hotel, every manufacturing enterprise to buy green energy directly, right? So that's a very good step that has just occurred. And of course, we are yet to see the results in terms of growth and so on, but that will happen now that the Electricity Act has been amended by means of this legislation. But I think the reality is that half of the power consumption in this country, precisely 52%, is commercial and industrial users, right? So rather than thinking about how every grid can decarbonize and how every household can decarbonize, the low-hanging fruit is this 50% of consumers who will save above 40% on their electricity bill by going green. And this is just the most fantastic value proposition. So imagine that if you're a corporation, you can go green and save 40% of your electricity bill. And that is about like a 15% jump in EBITDA levels for the average corporate, right? So you're doing good for the environment, you're not investing anything, and you're increasing your EBITDA 15%. And for the nation, because half of the electricity consumption is through commercial and industrial users, if those guys go green, the nation goes green with them.
Rajat, you spoke about the need for specialized institutions and green banks, etc., to be able to finance the aspirations of India Inc., of corporations that we just spoke of. But are there any global lessons in terms of innovative financing structures, innovative financing products that we could look at when we talk about taking this journey forward here?
No, absolutely, they are, Shireen. There's a lot to learn from all over the world. I mean, for example, we spoke about financing not being available for SMEs and that for Scope 3 financing. So, for example, HSBC has a fund in the UK of £500 million, which is meant only specifically for SMEs. There's several, globally, there's several uh, venture funds or venture debt funds which seek to address the problem that Mahesh just articulated, which is that at the risk stage or the early stage, or even at the development stage of a technology, there's not enough capital available. There's obviously a level of equity capital that is available, but perhaps you need a level of mezzanine debt, which is not very deep. Those markets are not deep, but you're seeing those funds come up. Several financial institutions, such as ourselves, have partnered with multilateral institutions. It's still relatively small amounts, so I think there's a lot more that can be done.
By telling us what you're going to be prioritizing within your own individual organizations. Of course, you're trying to help get the world to transition to a greener, cleaner future. But Kuldeep, specifically for what you're attempting to do within the company itself, within the organization itself, what are some of the measures taken and what more can we expect?
I think priority one is to just continue growing and serving corporates on their green transition journey. So that's a number one priority. The other two things which we are looking to build out, though, is one is how do we create a case for residential and small scale industries adoption of rooftop solar. That's nowhere near where it needs to be today. And it needs a very different model to serve because it's so disaggregated and so on. But that's another thing which we are beginning to focus on. And a third is how do we create a lot more carbon credits and make investments in moves which create those credits which allow offsets of the difficult to decarbonize applications. So those are some of the new areas, but it's all in service of corporates and individuals going green, which we really believe will be the manner in which this planet will make that energy transition.
Mahesh, what I want to understand from you are what are the key risks that you're dealing with today? I mean, we talked about the challenges of financing, but outside of that, the major risks and how you intend to make yourself less vulnerable to them.
I think we strongly believe that to accelerate energy transition, we have to solve energy storage as the biggest challenge, and so particularly long duration storage. So we are committed to build close to 100,000 megawatt hours of energy storage by the next 5 years. That naturally is really unlocking many pathways to deeper decarbonization in industrial complexes, whether it's hydrogen and also into electricity markets, right? So that's the biggest focus is to make storage cheaper and at scale. And we are forming a network called Cloud Storage Platform. And that's the biggest focus for us, so that each of those industrial complexes need not build on their own storage. They tap into our storage as a cloud platform and build their next phase of energy transition solutions. Just one last point on Rajat. We are also funding IIT Hyderabad to build a Greenco School of Sustainability and Climate Action. And that is to really enable this next phase of technologies to become industrialized as soon as we can. Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. Rajat, I'll give you the final say. Take me through what you're attempting to do for HSBC, at HSBC, and for the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you, Shereen. No, so this is a very important, I would say, a top three priority for us. I also see this, and the institution also sees this, not only as something that we need to do for society, but also commercially. So it ties into everything that we'd like to do. So really, it's a very very important priority for us. So the second thing I'd like to say is that we'd like to work with our corporate clients, and we have significant corporate relationships across industries, and to work with their supply chains, because I think that's an area which needs a lot of development and needs a lot of effort to move forward. I think the third area that I would say is to work with multilateral institutions, because financial institutions, especially global financial institutions like us, have the ability, but also also the duty perhaps to engage with different pools of capital to be able to get them to our clients who might need those pools of capital.
Absolutely, and this is something that requires urgent intervention and urgent action on part of all stakeholders. Well, gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us here on The Making. We appreciate your time. We wish you the very best of luck, and we do hope that you do accelerate your plans and push them through for the sake of the planet. Many thanks for joining us here on the program today. But that's it then on this edition of The Making. From all of us here, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.